Hello, welcome to the Tuesday Travel Chat. I'm Natasha Ho. Thank you so much for joining me. Before we jump into everything today, I have a really fun one planned for you, but I just wanted to take a quick second to acknowledge and let you know it is not lost on me at all that we are living through a really difficult time here, whether that's physically or emotionally, dealing with a lot. Also, here in the US, dealing with a difficult time for my community as a Black person. So none of that is lost on me, and I am so honored and appreciative that you choose to spend this time with me, and I hope that I can bring some light and joy from my corner of the world to yours. So today, I'm excited, like I said, to share what we're going to talk about today. Today, we are zipping off to East Asia. We're going to Taiwan. And it is a really bustling island. It's filled with delicious food, cool street markets, and centuries of history. And for me, Taiwan holds a special place in my heart because my husband's family is from Taiwan. And we went and visited a few years back, and we had a really magical experience. I learned a ton, and I think my husband learned a ton too about his heritage. And so now we have a son, and it's really cool to feel more connected to, his history and where he comes from. So I am really excited to talk about Taiwan. When we were there, we had done a tour, and a tour guide mentioned to us that a lot of tourists who come to East Asia, they skip over Taiwan. They don't ever think of it as a destination. There's the bigger highlight destinations like Japan or Korea or Thailand. People rush there, but a lot of people forget about Taiwan. And so I'm excited to introduce you to Taiwan if you don't know anything about it, if you're unfamiliar, or if you're curious about it and you're like, oh, I'd love to know more. We're going to talk today about how to bring a Taiwanese staycation home. So all the things that you can eat, do, and watch to have a taste of Taiwan right at home, wherever you are in the world. So the first thing that I want to talk about is give you a little bit of history or kind of context of what Taiwan is, because a lot of people don't know much about Taiwan. They'll be like, what's Taiwan versus Thailand, and mixing those up. So Taiwan is an island nation in the Pacific Ocean. It's right between Japan and the Philippines off the coast of mainland China. And it's been inhabited by lots of different populations. There are Aboriginal population that lived in Taiwan, and then there were colonizers from the Dutch and the Portuguese, Japanese, Chinese. There's a lot of politics there. I won't go into all of that right now, but just so you have an idea. Hi, Leanna. Hi, Jocelyn. Nice to see you guys. Hey, Colton. I won't go into all the politics right now, but just as you have the context, the Taiwanese think of themselves as an independent nation, like I mentioned, but China believes that they're a part of the People's Republic of China. So not that that's important for you to know, but just so you kind of understand a little bit about where we are in the world. So in terms of having a trip to Taiwan, I think the history is a really perfect place to start and understand the centuries of different eras and cultures, and like I said, the influences of all the different people who have lived there. So the first place I would start with for your trip to Taiwan is a visit to the let me remind myself of the name of this museum. There's so many, I always forget. What is the name of this one? Oh my goodness, I wrote it down in my notes now. Oh, the National Palace Museum. It's a super simple name, and of course it's difficult for me to remember what it's called. The National Palace Museum. And so the National Palace Museum, it has one of the largest collections of artifacts of Chinese art and culture in the world. So there are, I believe, more than 70,000 artifacts and pieces of art in that museum. And you can do a virtual tour to learn about all of the different eras in history, like the Silk Road, and you can learn about the arrival of the Chinese in Taiwan. So it's a really, really cool museum to get a bunch of history about Taiwan. And like I said, you can do a virtual tour online. Google has a really cool feature where you can go through and see tons of museums all around the world. And I really enjoyed this one a lot. And another thing, if you're a super history buff and you want to dig even deeper, there are two books that I would recommend for you that are specifically about Taiwan. One is called Forbidden Nation, A History of Taiwan. And the other one is called Tales from the Taiwanese. The first one is like a super deep dive into all the 400 years of history about Taiwan. So you'll get really deep into all the nitty gritty and really understand all those different eras of the history. And the other one is more like folk tales. And it's really interesting because it talks about more of like the Aboriginal people from Taiwan, and you get to have a more cultural perspective of the history of Taiwan. So those, if you're a history buff, I definitely recommend those two if you want to dive deeper into the historical context of Taiwan. The next thing is movies. I always think movies, like I say pretty much every week, movies are a really great way to immerse yourself because you get the visuals, you get the sounds of the language, you get to hear people from that country telling the stories of their culture in their own words. So I super say this is a must do. Watching movies and films is a really important way to experience another place. So Taiwan has tons of great cinema, really cool movies. I have a few recommendations for you, and one thing that is not a movie, it's a little bit different, but I think you'll really enjoy it, and I think it's really unique and kind of cool. So in terms of movies, I have 4 that I wrote down that I think were really cool, and it's kind of like, what mood are you in? What kind of movie I recommend that you watch? So the 4 that I have here, the first one is called A Brighter Summer Day. So if you want like an epic movie about like the human experience and you get to see the ups and downs and the emotional turmoil, this is a really good movie if you're in that kind of mood. The next movie is called Dear X, and if you really want to see like superb acting, like incredible performances from the actors, this is the kind of movie that you would watch. The next one is called The Bold, The Corrupt, and The Beautiful. And if you're in the mood for something, like if you live for drama, if you want all the corruption and the crime bosses and psychological warfare, like all of that, this is the movie for that. And then the last one, if you really want like a heartwarming, deep story, the last one's called A Son, and that movie is the one to pick for that. So I am putting together the blog post for today's session. I was completely caught up with taking care of my son and just enjoying the weekend, so I didn't get a chance to put it all in the blog post, but it will be up later this afternoon, and I'll write a post to let you know that when it's up. So there'll be links to all those movies, but they're all available on Netflix. As always, I make sure they're very easy for you to stream. So those are 4 that I would recommend if you want to check out a film that will tell you more about Taiwanese culture and you really get an inside look at Taiwan for your staycation. The next thing, like I said, is a little bit different in terms of something to watch. This one could also be a good one if you have little ones that you want to join you. So Taiwan has a very deep history of glove puppetry. Old school, like put your hand inside the puppet and, make it move. So puppetry has been around as part of Taiwanese culture for decades and decades, and it's still something that's very popular to this day. And there's even a TV show that still airs on in Taiwan that is about puppets, and it stars puppets. It's all done by hand with hand puppets. They do add some CGI for like the fight scenes, but it's still a super popular TV show. And so I definitely recommend checking this out. The TV show is called Pili, and I'll have a link for you later in the blog post when I put it up. But you can also check out on Isaac said, Extreme Puppeting, soon to be on ESPN. Yes, they need programming right now, so they should put puppeting on ESPN. But yeah, so it's a really cool way to like learn more about the culture, because they tell like opera-like stories that are very deep and immersive, but it's all done through the puppets. So I recommend that one. There are also a ton of like ancient stories that are folk stories that have been passed down for generations that are available on YouTube. So if you want to watch like the TV show, that's one thing, but there are tons and tons of other puppet shows that are available online that you can check out. They're really interesting and fun. I was sitting last night and watching some of them. It's really like draws you in. It's super interesting. It's not something that you would normally expect to watch, and also it's cool because usually you associate puppets with something that is for kids, but these stories are geared towards adults. They tell very deep, intricate stories. It's like watching a soap opera but done with puppets. So it's a really interesting thing to watch, and like I said, it's a very Taiwanese, something that you wouldn't find just anywhere. So definitely I recommend that one. The next thing is an absolute must do, like top of the list for Taiwan. One of the things that is world renowned and known for is for its night markets. And the night market is basically exactly what it sounds. It's a market that opens up on the streets at night. And so there'll be stalls that line up and down a long street. They'll have food stalls. They'll have places that sell tchotchkes and clothing. There's places that have like carnival games, all sorts of stuff. And people will come here in the evening, and it's like a cool hangout spot. You'll find a lot of young people there, a lot of tourists come to hang out there, and the food stalls will serve a lot of like fast foods or like street food options that you can taste. And there are lots of different specialties that you can try. If you've ever heard of stinky tofu, that's a common one that you'll see stalls for. All sorts of noodle dishes. Oyster omelet is a popular dish. There's this place when we went there that had fried chicken that was like the size of your head. It was the hugest chicken fillet I've ever seen before, but all sorts of really cool and interesting things. So in order for you to kind of get an experience of what it's like to go to a night market, you can do a video tour of a night market and walk through. And I pulled one that I'll share with you guys in the blog post, and he goes through and will introduce you to all the different things that you're seeing, and like the carnival games that are really interesting. And when we were walking through, I had no idea how to play some of these games, but it looks really cool and interesting, and you can walk away with like a pet fish or something if you want to take home. But yes, definitely recommend. The night market is like a quintessential part of an experience of going to Taiwan. They're all over the country. Some of the most famous and biggest ones are in Taipei, but they're all over, and it's a really essential part of your visit to Taiwan is going to the night market. So definitely make sure to include that video tour in your trip. And if you're watching people eat, if you're anything like me, when you watch other people eat, you want to eat at the same time. It's like when I sit and watch like the Great British Bake Off, Isaac and I are always like, we need to like have cake while we're watching this. So if you need to have something delicious to eat while you're watching this video tour, of course, we always have to include menu items. So you want to eat something delicious while you're watching delicious stuff on the screen. And there's a few really delicious things from Taiwan that you can bring home and eat to enjoy a literal taste of Taiwan while you're on your Taiwanese staycation. So the first one that I want to share with you is an export from Taiwan that's made its way all around the globe. You'll find it pretty much everywhere. Hey, Michelle, nice to see you. Thanks for joining me. And the one that you've probably heard of and seen before is bubble tea. And bubble tea originated in Taiwan in the 1980s. And I have my own I made my own concoction over here. It's actually quite delicious. I wasn't sure how it would turn out making it at home, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But bubble tea, yeah, like I said, it originated in Taiwan in the 1980s. It's now all over the world. And the reason that bubble tea has its name and how it came to be is there used to be tea shops that would be all around the city, but specifically right next to schools, there'd be a bunch of tea shops. And when the kids got out of school, they would run over and want to drink something. So they would serve bubble tea, they would serve tea. And the tea vendors were trying to make themselves stand out from the other tea vendors in order to compete. And one of them decided to start adding flavorings to his tea. And so when he would mix the tea, he would shake it to mix the flavor into the tea. And that would create little frothy bubbles all along the top. And so that's how it became known as the bubble tea. That specific shot had bubble tea. And then later on, they started adding another ingredient, which are called tapioca pearls, which are basically they use tapioca starch to create these little balls, which you'll see in this jar here. I bought some from the store. They're basically kind of gelatinous and chewy. It's kind of like eating a gummy bear if you've never had one before. And they added those into the tea. So then you had the bubbles on the top from the flavoring, and then the tapioca pearls on the bottom, which will also look like bubbles. So the name of bubble tea pretty much stuck because of those two things that are inside of it. It's also known as tapioca pearl tea or boba tea, but it's basically what it is. It's a black tea mixed with milk. Usually you use like half and half, and then there's a sweetener like a brown sugar syrup and the tapioca pearls. So making it at home is super easy. I wasn't sure how simple this would be, but I did it myself, so I can attest to the fact that it's really simple and delicious. And all you need to do is, like I said, brew black tea, and then you would add in your milk. I used a milk substitute. I used oat milk because I can't process regular milk very well, and it actually works perfectly just fine. So you can use a milk substitute if you can't drink regular milk. And then to make the tapioca pearls, I did not make these from scratch. I bought them. You can make them from scratch. I've seen recipes, but it's really easy to buy them. You can find them at Asian markets, or you can order them online, and just follow the instructions on the packaging, and then soak them in a brown sugar syrup. So put brown sugar on them, pour hot water on them, let them soak up all of that delicious sweetness, and then you mix all of the ingredients together at the end with some ice, and you have your milk tea. You can also infuse other flavors into it. So if you've ever seen bubble tea, you'll know the menu are huge. There's taro, and there's honeydew and jasmine. And then you can mix fruit flavors in if you like fruit, like strawberry or kiwi, mango. So anything goes, really. You can infuse all sorts of flavors into it. And this is pretty much like bubble tea you'll see everywhere in Taiwan. It's a great way to bring that home. And if you don't want to make it yourself, you can also buy bubble tea. Lots of places serve it. If you go to pretty much all sorts of Asian, it doesn't even have to be a Taiwanese restaurant. I know Vietnamese places, Japanese places that serve bubble tea. So you can find bubble tea at restaurants near you as well if you don't want to make it at home. But I think making it at home gives it a little extra something special. And with your sweet dish, you always have to have something savory to balance it out, right? So the other dish that I recommend making at home to have a taste of Taiwan is 3-cup chicken. And 3-cup chicken is a super simple dish. You can make it like one pot kind of thing, and it gets its name 3-cup chicken from the 3 main ingredients that flavor the chicken, and that is, we have soy sauce, we have rice wine, and sesame oil. And I was gonna make it, and then I ran out of time, so you guys are just getting my props, and later on I'm gonna make this for dinner. So it's really super simple though. It has those 3 things plus ginger and garlic in it, and pretty much you can cook it in like 15-20 minutes, throw it on some rice, and it's absolutely delicious. I learned to make the 3-cup chicken while I was in Taiwan. I took a cooking class with this woman. Her name was Ivy Chen. And we went there. She taught us how to make 3 traditional dishes. One of them is the 3-cup chicken, which is super delicious, really, really flavorful. It's like a burst of flavor in your mouth with all of those different ingredients together. The rice wine plus the soy sauce and the sesame oil. It's like just a bomb of flavor. We also made scallion pancake, which is a common street food that you will see in Taiwan. People also eat it at home. It's like a snack food as well. And then also we made another dish called xiaolongbao. And this is a Taiwanese or Chinese soup dumpling. And the really cool thing about this is that the soup is actually inside of the dumpling. So when you bite into it, you get this burst of flavor, and the soup actually inside of the dumpling. Hey Nicole, thanks for joining me. So the xiaolongbao, it's famous all throughout Taiwan. There's one restaurant that has kind of taken this to other parts of the world called Din Tai Fung. If you're in the East Coast or West Coast of the United States, or some parts of, I think they have a restaurant in Australia, and then different parts of Asia, you may have tasted a Din Tai Fung. It's super delicious, but it takes a lot of work to make. We spent a long time trying to make it. In terms of the secret to getting the soup inside the dumpling, what you actually have to do is you make the broth, and then you add in the collagen from pork bones. And so you let that cook and cook, and then the collagen will come out of the bones. You let that cool down, and then it turns into a jelly. You let that sit and really gelatinize overnight. And then the next day you take that jelly and you put it inside of the soup dumpling. And then when you warm up the soup dumpling, the jelly will melt and the broth will come out. And so now when you bite into it, you get this burst of the soup inside the actual dumpling. So it takes a lot of work. It's a really hard task. I totally recommend trying it if you have the patience to do it, but it gave me a greater appreciation for all the work that goes into making items like dumplings. I had the same experience when I tried to make croissant and realized how much work goes into croissant and macaron. I was like, wow, these things take a lot of time. So it really gives you greater appreciation for how the craft of making these foods. So if you want to try xiaolongbao, you can make them yourself, or check out a restaurant that serves them. But the 3-cup chicken is one that I highly recommend because it gives you, like I said, that super burst of flavor. So that's a really good one to try. And then going back to tea, I know we talked about bubble tea, but tea in general is a super big part of Taiwanese culture. obviously it's influenced by Chinese culture, and tea is very popular in Chinese culture. So one of the things that you can do to bring your Taiwanese staycation home is to do a tasting of teas, or to do a recreation of a Chinese tea ceremony. So the teas in Taiwan's world famous for specific kinds of teas. And actually, take a step back just to give you a primer on tea and kind of, you know, what tea is, because I actually realized that when I went to Taiwan that I didn't know very much about tea. So all tea comes from one plant. It's called the Camellia, let me make sure I say this right. The Camellia sinensis. And so there's only one plant that makes all the tea. In order for it to be a true tea, it has to come from the leaf of this particular plant. And then the different varieties of like a white tea or a green tea or a black tea, that's all based on the fermentation. So after it's been picked, they'll oxidize and ferment it. And then how long that happens for gives you white, green, or black tea. White would be the least oxidized, black being the most, and green being right in the middle. And so in Taiwan's world famous for their high mountain teas. So the teas are grown up high in the mountains, which usually is not the kind of conditions that you would want for a tea, but with the combination of the soil that is available in Taiwan with the high mountain air, it actually works out really well. And Taiwan is known for its oolong teas that are created in the high mountains. So if you want to do a tasting of Taiwanese tea, I recommend doing some oolong teas to try them out. While Isaac and I were in Taiwan, I brought home some of the tea, and the thing that's really cool is, like, if you're used to getting like tea in a bag, or even sometimes loose leaf teas, the Taiwanese oolong tea is a little bit different. I'll see if I can kind of show this to you on the camera. If you can actually see it, I'll maybe hold one up. There we go. So you'll see it's like kind of like in these little balls. And once you heat it up in the hot water, they unfurl. And it's really cool because each time that you steep the tea, you can like re-steep it over and over again. It'll release different flavors. And so these are really, the tea that they use in Taiwan is really high quality. You won't see like those little bits and pieces like with a tea bag where it's just little kind of tea dust. You'll actually get full-on leaves. So when those get heated up, they'll unfurl and you'll actually see a full-on leaf. And so the prices for Taiwanese tea, it is steep, but the nice thing is you can re-steep the tea, and so you can get more out of your money. Really make sure you get your money's worth with the teas. And if you want to try out doing the Chinese tea ceremony, it's also called the Gufeng tea method. And you basically, the whole point of it is for you to really admire the tea and to bring out all of the flavors and make the tea really taste the best it possibly can. So there's several different steps that happen throughout that process. It includes like really warming all of the different dishes that you're going to use before actually putting the tea in, to make sure that they are in the best primed condition for you to warm the tea and prepare and steep it. There's also different moments where you'll admire the tea, like I said. So you'll smell it, you'll taste it, you'll note the appearance of the tea. And so it's really an opportunity for you to admire all those different qualities. And you brew the tea one time and you'll enjoy that first brew, and then you rebrew the tea once, twice, 3 times. Some of them can be rebrewed up to 5 times, and you'll note each different time you brew it, what are the different flavors that come out, what are the different things that you taste, what are the different things that you smell. And so, like I said, there's a whole process. You can even buy one of the Gongfu tea sets. And in the Gongfu tea set, they'll have all the different pieces that you need in order to carry out and do the ceremony. But it makes it way easier if you buy the tea set. I have a little example of the tea pots that they use in Taiwan, which are quite different than the teapots that we're used to. You can see how tiny it is. It looks like it's a little toy tea kettle, but they use this because you want to brew the tea in much smaller batches in Taiwan in order to appreciate the flavors and to not release as many tannins. So you make a smaller batch and you'll release fewer tannins so you can really get the flavor of the tea and not all the other kind of stuff that comes in when you make a big batch of tea. So you'll see these tiny little tea kettles, very cute. And they use traditionally a clay kettle. So this one's made from clay versus like porcelain, which we usually traditionally use in Western cultures. They'll use a clay pot. And with that, the clay pot will start to absorb flavors. So they traditionally recommend you only brew like one kind of tea in your tea kettle, which seems like it would get really expensive because if you want more than one kind of tea, but you don't have to necessarily follow that rule. If you're not, becoming a tea aficionado and gonna like turn your whole life into tea, you could have one pot and just try a few different kinds. Some of the ones I really enjoyed, one of them was called Iron Goddess, and the other one is Oriental Beauty. Those are two really popular Taiwanese teas that you can get, oolong teas, like I said, and you can order them online, or if you have a tea shop near you that you enjoy, you can always go to your local tea purveyor and ask them about Taiwanese teas, specifically trying one of the high mountain oolong teas. And the next thing I wanted to talk about is a little craft project. You know me, we're always getting crafty here to bring home something really fun and kind of hands-on for you to do to enhance your staycation. So the next thing, usually, we always have decorations here. The one I wanted to share with you is making a paper lantern. And so I started to make my paper lantern, but like I said, I have a little person, so sometimes these things don't happen at the same schedule and that I intend for them to happen. So I started my my paper lantern, as you can see here. But it's a super easy project. All you need is like construction paper. I used extra tissue paper with mine to add the red to it, and then a little gold thread for adding decoration. But it's a really cool project because you can put it together really quickly, and then once you're done creating the paper lantern, which is a very common decoration throughout Taiwan and Chinese culture, you can practice drawing your Chinese characters on it. So you see the one behind me, I did not draw that one. When we were in Taiwan, this was a gift from our tour guide, but when Isaac and I went, we did a tour of Pingxi, and they make paper lanterns there, and so we decided to try our hand at drawing Chinese characters. Isaac has a little bit of practice from his youth. I had zero practice, and it's a lot harder than you probably think. Figuring out how to do the brush strokes. There's a very specific way where your brush is supposed to start and stop as you create each character, which order you're supposed to do each of the strokes in. So it's a really fun kind of experience to try your hand at that and see how you do with creating the Chinese characters. So I recommend that as a fun little side project. I was going to recommend for you guys to create your own like balloon paper lanterns that you can put out into the air with your wishes, which is a common thing that's done around Chinese New Year in Taiwan. But I learned, which may be news to you, it's actually banned in 30 states in the United States for you to do paper lanterns because they are considered a fire hazard. So I do not recommend that. Just anybody who's out there, please make sure you don't do that because it's a fire hazard and I don't want you to get into any trouble or start a wildfire or anything like that. So this is the alternative, is to create the lantern inside your house and to practice your Chinese characters on that, and to decorate your home and bring home a taste of Taiwan to your living room or wherever you are. So those are all of the items I have for you today. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoy your trip to Taiwan with this staycation. It's, like I said, one of my favorite trips that we've taken. It's a place that a lot of people may not know a lot about, but I think it's totally worth creating for your next staycation. And if you know anybody else who would be interested in taking a staycation, doing a staycation with us, please continue to invite them. I've seen lots of new faces here through the people that you guys have invited, which is super, super awesome. And I love growing this community. So please continue to invite your friends, your family, whoever you know who would love to join us and learn more about how to create awesome staycations. And if you have any questions or places that you want to go, please feel free to send me a message or just write them in a comment here on the video. If you're like, these are the places that I want to see, I have a couple coming up that are recommendations from you guys, so I'm really excited about those. But if there are more places that you want to see, please let me know in the comments. Or if you have a question on how do I recreate this, how do I do this, how would I create a vacation to this place, maybe you have a vacation that got canceled this year. I know quite a few of us do, and you're like, well, I can't go there, but I want to figure out a way to create that staycation. Oh, I see Jamaica. Yes, I like that idea, Nicole. Jamaica. If there are other places that you guys want to see, want to visit, aren't able to visit because a vacation got canceled, let me know what those places are, because I want to help you. I want to create content that will be specifically what you're most interested in. So please feel free to leave me a comment. Let me know what you'd love to see, where you'd love to go, and I will be sure to add those to the list. So I think that is everything I have for today. My trip got canceled, I got a staycation, I deserve it. Yes, exactly. If your trip got canceled, you deserve a staycation, and I want to help you get it. So thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you guys next time. Have a wonderful Tuesday. Bye, guys.